Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Crypto Crow here with my esteemed guest, Alex Mashinsky, from New York City, mind you, from Manhattan, the probably one of the most dangerous places on earth right now. Welcome once again.
Great to be with you again from the epicenter of the coronavirus attack. You know, this is like the World War II, you know, being bombarded by the Japanese. It's just this time it's Corona coming to us from China.
It's really scary. I saw pictures weeks ago of downtown New York City, and I'd never seen it. It looked like somebody was filming a coming zombie apocalypse movie. There was nobody in the streets, like the old Will Smith movie. You know, when he's just walking down, it's him and his dog. There's nothing else anywhere. That's what it looked like. And I'm sure it's probably even worse if that's possible now.
It's pretty bad. I can actually give you an angle of probably, this is 3rd Avenue right there. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
Totally empty.
One taxi.
One taxi, barely moving. So, yeah, I mean, the city is basically on lockdown. It doesn't matter what anyone says. I mean, the city has been already on lockdown for, I haven't left the house, you know, besides doing grocery shopping and things like that for the last 2 weeks. In my entire building, there's only 7 families that are still here. Everybody else left town. So, and what I heard that no matter where they went, Connecticut or Long Island or Florida, if you show up with a vehicle that says New York City on the license plate, they send you back.
Right.
They send you packing. So, you know, here we are.
Here we are,
locked up in a crypto castle in Manhattan.
You're especially locked up in a crypto castle. You've got the fortress to yourself, man. You could go find stuff to do, and you've got the whole building pretty much all by your lonesome. And I assume your staff and everybody. I mean, everyone at Celsius, they're all working from home and probably telecommuting and all of that. It started off kind of a ho-hum, kind of we've seen this all before, but somehow we ended up here, and it's really kind of getting a little scary. I'm not gonna lie. It's this whole viral outbreak. I watched on Prime, on Amazon Prime, I watched Contagion and then Outbreak, and just to get me a little scared so that I'm not like, because I'm so stir crazy, Alex. I'm losing my mind right now. I'm trying to find new things that I'm playing video games, I'm painting, I'm reading, but I'm doing it all. Typically, if I get bored, I would just leave the house. I would go do something. But now, you know, when I'm grinding out work and I'm researching and getting things lined up for a video or this and that, I want to take a break and I got nowhere to go. I'm going nuts, man.
Look, I did take on Friday, I took my 7-year-old running in Central Park, and actually bumped into Pompiliano, you know, the pump.
Right.
So crypto guys were all over town, all over the park, not a lot of other people. So Anthony was there, other people, and, you know, you gotta live. You can't just become a hermit and lock yourself in the house and whatever. But look, I tweeted about this, I think January 24th or middle of January, saying that what China can do over there, we cannot do in the United States. And because of that, we're going to have it much worse. And then put a picture of a bubble with a pin saying, hey, it's like the pin that's going to pop the bubble. The debt bubble accumulated since 2008. So, you know, comes first, but
your internet connection is really
choppy. The financial impact is going to be worse than.
Just so you know, like your video's pretty choppy, the audio's really choppy. Do you know if maybe you're downloading anything on the computer? I mean, there's nobody in your building, so your network shouldn't be getting shared with anyone right now.
Yeah, I'm still on wireless though. So.
Oh, come on! You can't use wireless on the interviews live. It never goes well.
Is this better better now, or it's still
It's
still
probably
choppy?
going to
I
continue
can
to be
switch to my
bad.
phone.
Do you
All
say
right,
you
so
used your
let
phone?
me. No, this is my desktop, but I can use my phone. It might be better. So you want me to switch over, or we
Uh,
stick with this?
I mean, we could probably try and make this work. I'm almost afraid of your phone being even worse. So yeah,
All right, let's continue. If it
yeah,
gets bad, I'll switch over.
okay. So obviously, this virus is creating a whole huge amount of mess and chaos everywhere. And now, I know one of the topics that we really wanted to hash on is the Federal Reserve and this whole, multi-trillion-dollar bailout that seemingly is more of another business bailout than it is anything for the general public who are losing their jobs and losing, just really struggling with no real end in sight. But yet we're a lot of this. I mean, you're talking overall like $6 trillion. This is just the first chunk of it. And
Yep.
I saw a breakdown recently of where the money is expected to go. And I was really surprised. Is this just another masked BS effort? I know that like the Democratic side is using this as a way to try and push a lot of crazy stuff through a bill. I mean, it just seems like a free-for-all, almost like the government's looting, itself somehow. Like what exactly is happening in your opinion?
Well, I think several things are happening. First, the Republicans became socialist overnight, right? When they saw that the economy is going to become a real depression, they all became socialists. They all like, how much money do you need to print? How much money should we throw in the economy? $10 trillion doesn't matter, right? So between the Fed and the government, that's over $10 trillion that's going to be printed or minted. And if you look back at what happened between 2000 and 2008, we had this inflation of the banking bubble, right? The banks were the one that took all the risk. And we've seen that bubble pop. And then we, the people, had to bail out the banks. And the bankers that worked in those banks, not a single person went to jail. They all got record bonuses a year later, right? So it's a debt bubble, right? So between 2008 and 2019, basically over 7 trillion. Am I good on the connection, or it's
yeah? You
choppy?
pause for a brief second, but you're good so far.
Okay.
I think the less you move, the less pixels you're processing and sending. So this might get hairy
right,
if
I'll
you get
freeze.
a little too animated, Alex.
I'll freeze. But between 2008 2019, basically, corporate America borrowed $7 trillion. Over 7 trillion to buy back their own stock. And when you buy back your own stock and you create more and more debt on your balance sheet, your stock price maybe goes up and the executives get great bonuses as well as the shareholders. But that debt doesn't go away. So now that the music stopped and there's a reset, right? All these companies like Boeing, like the airlines, they all bought billions of dollars worth of their own stock, right? And so we are going to bail them out, just like we bailed the banks in 2008. Most of the money from this $2.2 trillion economic recovery package is going to the large corporations. It's simple math. You take 230 million Americans divided by 2.2 trillion, and you're going to get something like, for families, per family, about $20,000 per family that each one was supposed to have if we just gave it to the people. But we're giving only $1,000 or $1,200 on average per family. And because most of the money, the biggest chunk, 500 billion, is going to large companies, another 350 billion to smaller companies, and then all kind of other. So very, very little left to the person who actually lost their job. The person last week filed unemployment, part of the 3.5 million people that did that. So I think,
well,
the
flip side to that is the companies can't file unemployment for themselves, right? So if a company's struggling,
they did. They basically went to the government and said, "We are quitting unless you're bailing us out."
Well, that's large companies. I'm talking more specifically like bars, restaurants, things like that. That and I'm not even talking about big multi state chains or things like that, but just the small mom and pop, the pancake shop, the small diners. The nightclubs, the bars that people work at, that sort of thing. I mean, they're not What are they getting? You know what I mean?
Nothing.
And from what I
and
hear,
in
they're
China,
saying you can borrow money to get you through this, but then you got to pay it all back.
Look, the little shops here on Lexington Avenue, right? I'm on 63rd Street in Lex. You go up 5 blocks, you go down 5 blocks. It's not just that they are not going to reopen. They already emptied the shops. Mm-hmm. They already took all their stuff out, and the store is empty. Even the door is not locked. Mm-hmm. So, and if you watch what happened in China, even after China went back to work, half of their businesses did not reopen. The retail shops, all the people you're talking about, because they were shut down for 2 or 3 months. They didn't have money to reopen.
Right.
So anyone, again, I don't want to be a doomsday guy or tell you there's a depression coming, but I think most people, especially the guys on TV, are underestimating how much impact we're going to have here, you know, and there is a silver lining. Because we haven't done any testing, there might be a scenario where 30, 40, maybe even 50% of the United States is already infected. Because the tests we're doing here in New York, some neighborhoods, when they test them, it's already 60% infected. So when people are infected and they don't have no symptoms, you know those people are not going to show up in the hospital. And actually, these people are safe to go back to work because they're all infected, right? They all already went through the disease. So in a way, there is a positive here, a silver lining, that because we were so lax about doing anything about the coronavirus, we already may have the herd immunity that the doctors and the specialists were talking about on TV.
You know, there's so much going on to this, and you know, when I think of the Fed, I was actually reading a legal document. It was a legal opinion from 2010, if I'm not mistaken, and it was basically a breakdown of all of the illegal activities the Fed utilized during the last financial crisis. And I was reading through this, and it started from the Fed's inception and the gambit that was ran for people to try and get it into a position of power, and then how that power was expanded over time, and the people that played the roles in that, and then from there, you know, the kinds of things that they're doing. And you know, realistically, a lot of people are thinking, oh wow, I'm going to get $1,300 for free. But they're not realizing that a $6 trillion amount of capital being just printed out of thin air is probably going to devalue the dollar to the point where that $1,300 is going to, it's going to do so much more damage to our economy, I think, overall. Why can't we just let some of these major corporations go away? If they, like, where are all the profits that these companies are accumulating when things are good that they can't afford to survive for 2 or 3 months on their own? Where the fuck is all this money going? You know, I see these pharmaceutical companies. I know they're bathing in cash, and they're some of the most greedy, dastardly companies out there, in my opinion, because they're not about saving lives or any of that stuff. That's not even a question in a shareholders meeting, I'd be willing to bet. Where is all this money going? Why do these companies I guess that's the question. Any other business that fails to operate for a period of months for whatever reason, they're not getting a bailout, virus or not. If they aren't managing their assets properly, that's their own damn fault. Why are all these other companies in the hands of the Fed? My point is, there's got to be some ulterior motive. There's something else happening that is giving reason to, you know, is it to promote Bitcoin privately? You know, is it no, like, hey,
definitely not.
You know, well, do we know that? You know, we don't even know where Bitcoin came from.
I think the large companies know that they are too big to fail. Boeing, being 1% of our GDP, of the United States GDP, knows that there's no chance in the world that they can fail. Like, no one would let them fail. So they borrow as much money as possible. They pay as much in dividends and in bonuses as possible. And when the music stops, they know they're going to get bailed out, right? So it's a win-win. It's the same thing the banks did in 2007, 2008. Every time they flip the coins, they will get what they want, what they're looking for. So I think, the United States is the mecca of capitalism, right? We are gods when it comes to building large companies, having those companies extract as much profit as possible, maximizing return to shareholders. And that's what this country is built on, right? And every 10 or 15 years, the music stops, and we, the people, get to bail out. Each time it's somebody else. 2000 was the tech sector, 2008 were the banks, and now it's going to be corporate America, right? And what happens in the reset? In the reset, Boeing is going to issue their executives shares at the new low prices. And then the same thing is going to happen all over again. The price is going to keep going up, the price of the stock. The executives are going to make a lot of money. No one's going to go to jail or get penalized. No one's going to be asked to return their bonuses from last year, right? So there is no, there isn't any moral hazard. There is no consequences of anyone paying anything for these actions. And the Fed has no choice. I mean, unfortunately, look, let's do the math, okay? Between the Fed was created, I think, 1913. Between 1913 and 2008, the Fed only printed $900 billion. So almost 100 years, it printed only $900 billion. Then from 2008 to 2018, just 2 years ago, it printed $3.5 trillion. So more than three times more than it did in 100 years.
It's printing a million a minute right now.
Yeah, and now in 1 year, it's going to print more than it did in 120 years, right? In 1 year, it's going to print another $5 or $6 trillion, like you said, diluting the dollar, hoping that the rest of the world, which denominates all of its transactions in dollars, when oil is being sold or gold is being sold or any kind of international commerce, most of that is conducted in dollars. And we're praying, all of us, all Americans are praying that all these other countries will not say, forget it. I'm not using this dollar anymore. You know, it's worth half of what it was worth just a year ago. So right now, the world is also bailing all of us out, all of our unconscious and financially sound behavior, because we pumped this bubble as fast as we could. And every executive, every banker, every guy on Wall Street here tried to squeeze as much as they could before the music stops, right? And you know, unfortunately, again, look, the Bitcoin has not behaved as a non-correlated asset. It's not like we can now show everybody here is the Bitcoin, switch over from whatever you were using before to the Bitcoin, right? It's not ready. It's just not ready. And we have too many speculators. The same people that were trading in Apple and trading in Boeing were also buying and selling Bitcoin. How do we know? Because when they were selling all these other stocks, they were also selling Bitcoin. And that's why we have the flash crash. And at this exactly the same time that the stock market had its own flash crash. So we have to have a different set of people. And we talked about that last time you had me on, right? That there is not enough hodlers. There is not enough people who in this to make the world a better place, to create a new economic system. They're all speculators.
I just saw recently a study that went through all of the different Bitcoin wallet addresses, and we have more people holding one Bitcoin now than we've ever had in the history. So there are people getting the message, and there are people that are accumulating and holding. And a lot of people, it seems to be, I just want to get one Bitcoin in case it ever goes to $1 million. You know, it's like that it's that dream of, I'll be a millionaire someday just by holding one Bitcoin. Yes. And that could very well be true. But the story needs to grow beyond just that. We need to figure out ways to be able to really utilize cryptocurrency in a mass way with a lot of adoption. And, you know, yeah.
And the Fed is pushing all of us in that direction because there's just no justification. I mean, I understand why they're trying to save the entire US economy, and they're buying everything right now. Anything that has a dollar sign on it, they're buying it, right? It's this dash for cash. I mean, the Fed right now, and I talked about it, when the Fed bought the first few $100 billion in the repo market in January, I flagged it. I said, hey, this is an earthquake. This is not just a little event, right? You guys have to understand that if banks are not willing to lend each other and the Fed has to come in the middle and be the broker and print hundreds of billions of dollars, and now they're printing trillions of dollars to basically do repossession of paper between the banks, that tells you that the whole system is frozen, right? And it's frozen in the corporate debt market, it's frozen in the repo market, it's frozen in in bonds. So they have to basically play in every part of the financial system, because if they're not in there pricing securities and pricing debt and pricing other type of financial assets, no one is, because everybody's sitting on their head saying, I don't know if it's worth zero, if it's worth 50 cents on the dollar. So these trillions of dollars that the Fed is printing is exactly what Japan has been doing for the last 20 years,
Right.
and we're going to end up like Japan with completely with zero interest rates and zero growth and deflation.
So what do you think is going to dethrone the Fed?
Look, Japan proved that you can do that for 20 years and nothing happens, right? So I think it's going to be hard for me to argue with that this model doesn't work. What people have to understand is that if they own anything, it's going to be worth less, not more, right? Mm-hmm. So we created this bubble, and the total debt. I mean, if anyone saw my presentation, I did on YouTube on our channel, Celsius Network. And I went through like 60 slides describing exactly how all this debt was created. And there's $246 trillion worth of debt that needs to deflate, meaning 100 trillion with a T needs to deflate to zero, because no one can repay that debt. You see, even though the music stopped and all these shops closed and the airlines are not running, the debt for the airlines or the debt for Boeing still accumulates interest. Mm-hmm. So the debt doesn't stop. The music doesn't stop on the debt. It just stops on the equity, and it stops on all these guys who are trading all day long. But the debt continues to accumulate interest. And what happens is that the debt guys are basically saying, hey, you can't pay me my interest? Good. Give me the company. Give me all the equity, right? And that's what happened to AIG and other huge companies in 2008. So what you're going to see is this gigantic transition of value, transfer of value between the shareholders and the bondholders. And I'm talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of value changing hands, because all these companies that extended themselves are going to have to basically deflate and devalue themselves and sell the equity for the debt. And that hasn't even started yet, right? So anyone who's talking about V recovery doesn't understand anything that's happening. It's not going to be a V. It's not going to be a W. It may be an L, or worse than that, So we have not seen the bad news yet. We have not seen the corporate quarterly earnings announcement, the downgrades from the credit companies. We have not seen the layoffs yet. None of that has taken place yet. And unfortunately, again, most people will look at this and say, wow, all of my assets were denominated in dollars, kept in the stock market, and it's now down 40, 50, 60%. What do I do, right? That hasn't happened yet. And all these people who think there's a V recovery here, tell me how we're going to have a V recovery. Based on what? What is going to recover? The airlines, the cruise ships, the local stores, right? I mean, I can't even get deliveries. So forget it. It's like the whole machine just stopped.
The whole machine did stop. But I also do believe that this isn't going to be, I do believe we're going to recover from this. And I do believe that, I personally think that once we get that ability to exhale, I think we're going to see a lot of very quick recovery from that point. It's a matter of how long is it going to be until we reach that point, and how much damage will have been done by then. And so that's...
Look, so that recessions are not a bad thing. Recessions allow an economy to retool and emerge with the companies that it's supposed to be. The leaders of between 2000 and 2008, the leaders were not the leaders that you had in the 90s. And after 2008, the leaders were not the leaders you had between 2000 and 2008. So what each recession does, it allows new companies with new business models, like Zoom, for example, right? The service we're using right now, right? Companies that were okay companies before this collapse to become the dominant companies going forward, because everybody has to use the service, right? So I think we are a service economy already, but our service economy is going to transition from what we thought was great, which was like the gig economy, into more of knowledge economy, work from home economy, and so on. And so that's the opportunity. If we go and rebuild everything that existed in the last 10 or 15 years, then we haven't done anything. We have not used this recession to retool our economy to be ready for the next 10 to 20 years.
Well, that brings me to the question of that U.S. cryptocurrency bill, right? Or that element of the bill that was then taken right back out.
Digital dollar?
Right. So somebody's obviously thinking about this right now. I mean, somebody's obviously thinking, okay, how can we create a new economy to replace the old one, right? Because we know this isn't working. We know this is doomed. We know that this is nothing but problems and more debt and more, maybe there's something to this, and how can we make that work? And I think that they pulled that out. Somebody slipped that in there, I think, for a reason, to let the people know, look, we know this is in bad shape. They pulled it out to say we're just not ready. So that's my opinion. But I think this is something we're going to see in the not so distant future, unless I'm completely mistaken. But my question is, how do you think, let's say they were to do that, how do you think they would utilize this new blockchain token to replace the US dollar as it is today, get rid of paper money altogether, and then implement this in a way that, the Fed doesn't just go away. The Federal Reserve, it's not like they're just going to walk away like, we tried. Yeah, good luck with your new coin. Hope it works out. You don't owe us anything. We're good. Like, how do you think that would be facilitated in a way that works for both sides so that we can move beyond where we're at and kind of start fresh in a sense? Or is that even going to be possible at all?
I was on Bloomberg TV 3 months ago and asked me exactly the same question, and I'll give you exactly the same answer. I think you have three horses, a horse race between three different horses, right? You have obviously the crypto world that's saying, hey, use us, we are the best. We've been around for 11 years. But the problem with crypto is it has limited supply, and no politician is going to move from something that they can print as much as they want to something that has limited supply. So the problem we have is that what we call great, what we believe in, the Austrian economics, limited supply, right? Deflationary currency is the opposite of what politicians want. So if you look at what the United States government is looking for, they're not looking for something like Bitcoin. They're just looking for something they can issue digitally, they can control, they can monitor, they can see what the spending is and where it's going and so on. But they want to mint it, they want to control it, they want to distribute it, right? And the third horse is the corporate version, right? If it's JP Morgan or if it's LBRY from Facebook, right? Those are the corporate versions that are going to both the government and the crypto community and say, hey, we figured it out, we built it, right? We're going to run it in a control, almost like private blockchain, and enable billions of people to run on our network. And now we're going to know everything about their financial information, right? Right now, Facebook doesn't know anything about your financial spending. Mm-hmm. But if they get that LBRY going, then they will have everything about your social life, your social graph, plus everything they need to know about your financial transactions, right? And that's what they're looking for. So each one of us, we the citizens, have to decide, are we going to enable the US government with this unlimited printing, unlimited bailout, where corporate America always wins? It doesn't matter what they do or don't do. They win when things are great, and they win again when things are horrible, right? Or we're going to give it back to companies that are obviously not acting in our best interest. Or are we going to build a new economy, decentralized economy, where we are building things that are acting in our best interest, and we're building them in a way that Satoshi envisioned, right? That it's completely detached and decoupled from the existing economy. And that's what we don't see enough. What I see a lot of is a lot of crypto companies that copied exactly what Wall Street did, copied exactly what corporate America did. They're all just another version of a toll collector, right? And that's why our industry is not taking hold or taking root, right? Because what's the difference between using CoinBase and using Bank of America? They're both toll collectors. They do exactly the same thing, right? True. So I think we need to rethink what is the foundation of this company, right? The reason, for example, we created Celsius was the foundation was that we're going to give 80% back to the users, right? And we're the only company after several years, still the only company in crypto that does that. There's no one else that does this. So I think the model of extracting as much as possible from the community is the yesterday's model. That's a model that dominated between 2000 and 2020. Okay, and the model for the future is the model I think that we created, that other people are now copying, right? And which basically puts the community and your users, not your customers, not your shareholders, but your users, your customers, as the first priority. So look, we're going to go through a major cleanup, right? Everything is going to be reevaluated, every service, every job, everything we do, because many of these things are just not going to survive this reset. Because a lot of the things that could be funded or provided, like all these companies that subsidize services for their customers, like Uber subsidized $14 billion worth of rides for Yappies, all of that is out of the window. You know, no financial investor is gonna tolerate that anymore, or WeWork, or any of these other things. So I think the business model itself is being questioned, right? The business model of what is the American economy, what is GDP, right? And like you said, inflation is not just, is your milk costing more or less, or is your internet connection costing more or less? Inflation of money, which is the biggest problem for most Americans, it's an invisible inflation. No one is talking about, no one can measure, and definitely the Fed doesn't want anyone to know what's happening there.
Well, the one thing that I keep seeing in chat, and I think this is a big misconception with the general public, in that when is Bitcoin, and Vince, I've got your question. I've seen the questions. I'll ask them at the proper time. But, you know, there's this big misconception that Bitcoin is what needs to be used for transactions, that it needs to be Bitcoin sent from point A to point B to make Bitcoin grow and be worthwhile. No, it's not about the Bitcoin, people. What it's about is, if Bitcoin is ultimately the primary
store of value.
Thank you. I don't know why I had a brain fart there. If it's the primary store of value, what happens is, let's just say hypothetically we had 5 other cryptocurrencies in the market. Everything else was gone. We just had these primary 5. In each one of these, we're targeting a very specific vertical within the global economy, okay? Whether it was, you know, XRP, you know, and that was what was used by banks. We had another one that was strictly for car sales. We had another one for counterfeiting, and so forth and so on. And these tokens were being traded and used on a consistent basis every minute of every day. And after every transaction, or after somebody's usage of these cryptocurrencies has concluded, they go back into Bitcoin as a store of value to be used and transferred back into any one of the other primary tokens that they need to utilize at any given point in time. And as that happens, and as the use cases of cryptocurrencies grow, and these tokens that are out there are utilized for new, different, interesting things, from artificial intelligence to machine learning to whatever the case may be, these transactions go back into Bitcoin to be held or stored until those needs arise again. And over time, that pushes the volume of trading activity and transactional activity of Bitcoin up, 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 up. And so that people are buying little bits of Bitcoin. They're buying Satoshis of Bitcoin at a time, not fractions of a Bitcoin. They're not buying 25% of a Bitcoin back and forth or trading it. It's overall about reducing the number of Satoshis that are being utilized on a consistent basis, but increasing the value. And that is ultimately what's going to drive the price of Bitcoin up. And that's also what's going to fund and fuel the mining economy when there is no more Bitcoin to be mined. That is the end-all use case as I see it, and why I'm here. And I hope that makes sense to people. Do you agree or do you disagree? Am I crazy?
No, I agree with you. I just think what we're missing is a denominator, right? Because the currently, you know, that stat you mentioned before, that there's more people using have one Bitcoin in their account. It is true, but active accounts in the last year is at 624,000 on Bitcoin, right? It's just a tiny little number. Total number of users that have crypto accounts, Bitcoin crypto account, I think something like 27 million people. So the entire crypto community, I think like something like 49 or 50 million people still, right? 11 years into it. So So we need a much broader denominator. If we had a billion people in, then the price would be much more stable. I mean, this year Bitcoin was 14,000 and was 3,500.
Right.
Within few months, right? So if you had a billion people, that would not happen. You see, like if you look at the US dollar, which has probably 5 or 6 billion people using it one way or another, because everything you consume in China got denominated in dollars and imported, right? People don't understand that's what the US dollar is the worst store of value. It lost 97% since 1971 when it went off the gold standard. But it's an exceptional form of payment. So people are confusing and thinking that the dollar is a great store of value. It's a horrible store of value. And the best store of value in the last 11 years, doesn't matter when you look at it, the Bitcoin.
Right.
So I agree with you 100%. But what we as a community we're not doing is we're not increasing that use case. If the use case was $1 billion, a billion people, we would have a very stable store of value, right? And then you could do payments and you could do all this other stuff you're talking about. So our mission, look, when I got into this industry, and you met me in 2017, are we going to bring the next 100 million people into it? Because we're going to give them something that they cannot get from the bank, they cannot get from the Fed, they cannot get from being an exceptional money manager, which is simple interest income. Okay, they're not going to get. We pay 6, 7, 8% on your dollars, on your Japanese yen, on your pounds, British pounds, right? And that's something that neither the Fed nor the banks nor Wall Street can compete with, right? And that's how, in my view, you bring the next 100 million people. And when you bring them, you stabilize the price. And when you stabilize the price, you can do all this magical stuff that you talked about, because the merchants and everybody else will start using XRP and all the other solutions that are out there. So we are, I think we got the cart ahead of the horse here, and we're already celebrating with, we're a tiny little community, like again, the banks are not even worried about us.
So obviously, everybody that watches my channel knows that I'm a holder of Cell token. And, I've had a couple of questions related to the Cell token. One of them is the idea, I guess, that some of the founders have been selling their Cell tokens recently. What do you know about that, and what's happening with that? Is that true? Is there a reason? What's happening?
So first, we publish all of our holdings, unlike anybody else, I think. I don't know any other project that publishes their holdings. So you can see our top 100 holders. It's just Celsius.network/top100. And you can see in real time, every week by week, what do we have, when are we buying, when are we selling, and so on, so on. I don't know any other project in crypto that did not sell any tokens during the ICO, did not sell any tokens before they got listed, did not sell any tokens after they got listed, right? And to date, if you do the math of, okay, how much did Alex, Nuke, and Daniel sold, less than 10% of our holding, right? So personally, I have a tax bill of over $1 million. Yes, I have other income, but I also had to sell a little bit of token. I talked about it publicly, both on Telegram and on Twitter. And I said to people, look, I have to sell some token. And most of those sales were done in OTC, meaning peer-to-peer, with people who then went and deposited these tokens with Celsius, meaning they didn't go and dump them on the exchange or anything like that. So I think compared to any other projects, and there's 3,000 projects to compare us to.
Let me stop you right there, Alex. And I don't mean to be rude, but the fact that you just so transparently explained that to me says a lot, and it says enough. I know exactly what it means to owe, a much larger tax bill than you were expecting, and I know what it's like to have to take out a home equity line on your house to pay the tax man, it's. So I get it, and I understand it, and I think, just that comment alone to me, you just went above and beyond what anybody else I've ever seen do. So, the transparency is appreciated. Yeah, especially right now, because it's difficult, especially for crypto companies in general, to survive just the bear market, let alone this viral market, this virus that's shutting everybody down. And so if selling a few tokens is what keeps you floating and it keeps your world moving, having the luxury and the ability to do that, like you said, if everybody like less than 10%, I mean,
And we like last week we hired 4 new people for Celsius, right? Do you know anyone who's hiring?
No, I
Almost
sure don't.
everybody in crypto is chopping heads, liquidating, selling assets, dumping everything they can. Celsius is hiring, and who did we hire? We hired people from the community. We hired people who worked really hard for us as ambassadors. So we are trying to support, and again, what we have is only 20%, right? We give 80% back to the community. With that 20%, we have to do everything. We have to build the product. We have to hire people. We have to run all over the world and service customers from over 170 countries, right? Stay compliant, deal with lawyers, all that stuff, right? So again, I think we are the standard in the crypto community, both in how we treat our community, how we communicate with our community, the transparency we have. I mean, you compare us to Compound or any DeFi project, and you show me how they are doing better than us in any category, both in transparency, in security, right? All these guys got hacked, millions of dollars got stolen from them. They had to liquidate half of their customers. So we, in this liquidation process, when Nexo, BlockFi were liquidating all their customers, Celsius almost didn't liquidate anybody. We gave everybody an opportunity to top off or return some of the assets, some of the dollars we lend them, and go on the internet and look at anyone saying bad things about Celsius. So all that stuff costs money. All that stuff is stuff that we are subsidizing. We are taking money out of our pocket. Again, I took a 90% salary cut, leaving my fancy public company where I was running a public company out of San Diego, making millions of dollars a year, to start Celsius and do this for the community. So if anyone thinks that I'm not acting in his best interest, then they don't know what the other projects are doing. Because talking about projects that dumped on their community, people that held 20, 30, 40% of the tokens and dumped all of that on their community, you're not going to find anything like that. We have almost 800 million tokens, okay? What the entire team sold is less than 1% of all the tokens, okay? Less than 1%. So it's completely irrelevant to the price to sell.
Yeah, and I think I understand the question, but I understand and appreciate the answer. When a lot of Celsius's slogans and marketing is hodl, 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 and then they're like, well, why are they selling? What's this hodl shit about? They're dumping their token. But I get it. You have to keep the wheels turning, and that's just, especially now more than ever. Look, I mean, say no more, man. I mean, I completely get it, and I feel like your response to that was is about as transparent and open.
And
as
it's
you can
all
get.
Publicly available. The wallets, how much is deposited. Anyone can see how much went out and how much came in. We publish how many Cell tokens are held in the Celsius wallet. So you can see exactly if these coins went to market or if they went to other top 100 hodlers. So, and I want to thank the 85,000 people that are Celsius users worldwide. I gotta switch the mic.
Oh no, that audio is so much better. Whatever you just did.
Better?
Oh my God, it's so much better.
All right.
What the hell are you doing, Alex?
I was using the AirPods, and it looks like they were not.
Well, Apple stock just went down because the world just realized that those things are shit when you're doing internet broadcasting.
All right, we'll stick with iMac. So look, the most amazing thing that I can tell you is that when Bitcoin went from 14,000 to 3,500 in the last 2 months, or 3 months, we have not seen any withdrawals. The opposite. What we've seen is people switching from DeFi. We had something like 60,000 ETH show up in a matter of days that left Compound and left Maker and came to Celsius because these people just basically said, I'm not doing this anymore. So the community is voting with their wallets, is voting with their trust, because they know that this project is acting in their best interest. So I think I'm shocked, frankly, because we had reserves. I mean, we accumulated reserves, being worried that this collapse in the stock market, because we've seen people cashing out gold, selling their Bitcoin, selling, not with us, we don't sell it, but I'm saying you can see the prices going down. You can see people liquidating everything. Actually, it was just announced yesterday that $700 billion worth of cash was liquidated in the market and moved into money market funds
on Wall Street. And that's all people that sold everything. They sold gold, they sold Bitcoin, they sold stocks, bonds, just to sit on enough cash, right? So the Celsius crypto community, the opposite, has been buying coins, not selling coins. So I think the resiliency of this community and the fact that we got rid of all of the tourists, all of these speculators that just came to crypto land because they thought they could manipulate the market and they all left back to fiat land. I think that is an amazing achievement for us, because now we can finally decouple the price of Bitcoin from being attached to the stock market to being attached to gold. And you can start seeing that in the last 3 or 4 days. Gold went up 10%, Bitcoin went up more than 10%. And I just hope that next week and the week after, we're going to continue seeing that correlation because the speculators are out.
Well, I did some calculations in the Bitcoin market in a recent video compared to a few months back, and we've got about an extra 2 million Bitcoin being traded on a daily basis right now than we did a few months ago. So I feel like we got a lot of weak hand money, like people that just sold at a low and got out thinking they're going to buy back in at 3 or 4 grand. And watching the price behind my head, this whole video, Bitcoin's sitting at 59.05 and it's been going up and down about $100 over and over, up 100, down 100, up 100. So there's, it's right now it's down $347 apparently. And, I think that at what point does the general public really start to take notice to Bitcoin and what it's good for and the cryptocurrency market? Like, people are watching the Fed ultimately committing to printing $6 trillion new dollars and pumping it into the system to save big business yet again. And it's the exact reason why Bitcoin was created to begin with. And so, where is that narrative on a large scale? Why is it that we're not getting droves of people who are just getting into the space right now? Well, I mean, because people are losing their jobs and I mean, so yeah, I guess what I'm saying, and I'm getting to verbally, but it's running around in my head, is as soon as this thing starts to die out, this virus, and people are able to get back to work and there are there's new opportunity, I really do believe wholeheartedly that the crypto market is going to see a boom like it's never seen before, because I think the message is going to be clear. Once this is concluded, the fear is gone. People can go and breathe some fresh air and go hug their neighbor once again. I believe that the sentiment overall is going to be drastically different than where we were before the virus, and I really see Bitcoin going crazy, as well as the altcoin market to some degree initially.
Yeah, look, I think there's going to be a wave of adoption. I agree with you. I just think that we, again, as a community, need to do a better job to have less scammers and less of all of these pumps and all these crazy things that burn customers, burn newbies, burn people that want to join. They understand that there is something good here, but everything they touch, instead of turning into gold, turns into a frog. I don't know what it turns into, but it's that right now. We have too many scammers in this community. We have too many bad projects. We have too many things that just try to suck more and more fees out of you, right? Origination fee and a transaction fee and a withdrawal fee. Like Celsius is doing it with no fees. We don't charge any fees whatsoever now for 2.5 years, right? So how can we do it with no fees, pay salaries to 70 people, have 600 million in assets worldwide, and other people can't? You understand? So the whole idea that you have to basically take money out of your customer's pocket, and that's the only way to run a business, is just a false idea. So we need to clean that up, because if we don't clean that up, I mean, look, BitMEX liquidated $1 billion worth of longs through this flash crash, right? $1 billion worth of longs. I mean, I know these were mostly speculators who want leverage and so on, but you just lost tens of thousands of users. They will never come back. They either lost all their money or they lost other people's money. And we have all of these things again and again and again, or people who run away with the coins, or the scammers in China with all that stuff. You cannot build a community. You cannot build a new industry, and definitely not a replacement for this collapsing economy, which is the historic U.S. economy with all that shenanigans going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we the people, me and you, people like me and you, have to take the leadership here and convince one by one, convince people that this is a safe ground. Here, you can really join this community, and here people do act in your best interest. Right?
Well, unfortunately,
we shine through this flash crash. We shine through it.
Right.
That's why we published our results. We said to everybody, hey, we were profitable last year. We're profitable this first quarter. We had record revenues. We hadn't had a single default with a counterparty. We liquidated a single digit, less than 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of customers, less than 10 people got liquidated because they didn't have enough collateral to put up. You know, where other people were liquidating thousands of customers. So are you really acting in the best interest of your customers? Well, then you get, for every one of those customers, you're going to get 10 new customers or 100 new customers. And that's what we need. Like, so I agree with you. Look, this is not easy. It's not obvious, right?
When are you going to be able to put Cardano on Celsius on the app? What the hell's wrong with you? What's going on?
So first, they're going to go live on their mainnet. I think they're still testing.
True.
And second, I need the only coins we have in our wallet are coins that generate yield, right? So there's a lot of coins we don't have there. It's not because I don't love Cardano.
Right.
I have Cardano myself.
Of course you do. You better.
But I cannot currently generate yield on Cardano. There's not enough borrowing demand, and we cannot borrow against it. And
how can you test borrowing demand before you've done it?
We have 230 hedge funds and institutions that ask us every day what they want. Believe me, if they started saying to me, I want Cardano, we would add Cardano in a minute. Mm-hmm. So the issue for us is they all want Litecoin, they all want Ethereum, they all want Bitcoin. So I'm taking as much as I can out of, from those coins, as well as all the other 26 that are listed in our wallet, right? So our job is really just to generate the yield, right? And give 80% of it to the coin holders. Imagine if all these guys are asking for bailout, we're giving 80% back to their customers. Imagine the airline, instead of buying, the airlines bought $3 trillion with a T worth of their own stock in the last 10 years. Okay. And now they're asking for a bailout that's going to cost us $1 trillion, right? So, I mean, it's like like you said, they made the money, right, but they gave it to their shareholders. They didn't give it to their customers. They didn't put it in their own safes and said, okay, here, we're going to put this aside for a rainy day. No, they said we're going to give even bigger bonuses to our CEOs, and we're going to pay out even more to our shareholders, right? So
I think instead of these damn cash $1,300 bailouts, they should be giving dividend stock to the public and let them sit on it.
I agree with you. The public should own 70% of.
We're paying the bill for all this. I mean, why shouldn't we? The public should. Every middle class and lower should be getting free dividend stocks of all these companies that we're bailing out on a regular basis.
Mnuchin is a third generation Goldman Sachs guy. If he was negotiating for the average American, he would be demanding these deals from these companies before he wrote them these checks.
Right.
But he's not going to do that. Why? Right. Because he's always on the side of the large corporations and not on the side of the small, small town American guy who just got corona and he doesn't have insurance coverage and his wife lost her job and their kids are not in college. No one cares about those people, you know? So we got to create a new economy, an economy that is based on deflationary currencies like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, that are generating yield for you. They appreciate in value and they pay you yield on top of that, right? And that's, again, we've proven for 2.5 years that there's no problem. The wheels at Celsius are turning with zero friction. And it doesn't matter if it's a shiny day or it's a rainy day. During the worst collapse this is the worst financial collapse since 1933. We performed with flying colors.
You know, it is odd now that I think about it. Why the hell the government isn't saying, hey, we're going to bail you out, but because we're going to devalue the populace's dollar to bail you out, we want X percentage of your stocks that we're going to distribute as part of the stimulus package to the public that's paying this tab.
So look, they did that in 2008, right? The AIG, the U.S. government owned 80% of AIG.
I don't mean the government. I mean the people that are paying it. The taxpayers are paying the bill, yeah.
Through the U.S. government, through the TARP program, owned 80% of AIG. And eventually, when AIG sold all of its assets, the U.S. Retail consumer, the American who basically paid into TARP through taxes, because basically when TARP was created, it was all funded with U.S. taxes. Eventually, AIG paid, and all the other companies, the banks, everybody else paid more than the money that the U.S. government gave them. So it was a good deal, but it was not as good of a deal as what Warren Buffett did with Goldman Sachs, where he gave him $5 billion, or what Warren Buffett did with Bank of America, where he gave him $5 billion and he made $13 billion, right? And these are the deals that the U.S. people should be making. Warren Buffett should be going around with that $2.2 trillion and negotiating deals for the American public. Mm-hmm. The same deals he would be negotiating for himself when he writes those checks for companies in distress.
No, it's just like the healthcare system. You know, these politicians are forcing shitty healthcare on the public, but they're not willing to use it themselves. So
So look, I think this is a big opportunity for crypto, but it's also a moment in which people don't trust anything. They don't trust their politicians. Now they don't trust, they already stopped trusting the banks. Now they don't trust the large corporates either, right? And they definitely don't trust the news or any other source. So convincing people, look, we're not allowed, we Celsius are not allowed to advertise on Google, not allowed to advertise on Facebook, not allowed to advertise on basically any medium, because these large corporates decided that we're not a legitimate company. You understand? Just ludicrous. And so these guys, especially the banks, decide who they service, who they don't service. For example, the banks, even today, refuse customers who are trying to use a JP Morgan Chase or a Citi card to buy Bitcoin through Simplex or any of these services. Today, they block it, So this is not a fair game. It's not like we're playing cards and you have the same number of cards and I have the same number of cards. No, so we're not going to win this by playing fair with the banks or playing fair with large corporates. We're going to win this by convincing the users to stop using their credit cards, to stop supporting their banks, and switching to a whole new economy, which we need to create. And there's a lot of good companies that are trying to do that, but there's also a lot of companies that have failed, and that's why the trust level in crypto is not as high as it should be.
Well, apparently people in chat want you and I to run for president and vice president.
You can. I wasn't born in the United States, so I cannot run for president.
Oh, so that means I have to be president and be hated by the world, and yeah, that sounds wonderful.
I'll be your financial advisor.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I always tell everybody, I always get crow for president in chat. I'm like, I would be dead in 2 weeks if I were president. I would just, I don't think that would work out well.
It's time we had a 7-foot tall president. I think all these guys are way too short.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine me meeting with China? Wow, that would be scary. Alex, I've always really liked Celsius. Obviously, I've been holding since the beginning, and everything that you've done. I've met you now several times. You've always been just extremely passionate about your role in the space and what you're trying to accomplish through Celsius Network. And as always, I always applaud you on your effort and what you're accomplishing and working towards. And I do believe that your day will definitely come. I mean, it's every day that goes by that you continue to push forward, I commend you, because very few people are out there in the middle of it all, not only promoting themselves and their company, but actively trying to make the space better beyond their own pocketbooks, which is a rarity in cryptocurrency right now, because everybody is struggling. And you never let anybody see you sweat, sir. And I applaud that. I certainly do, because everybody knows I'll get mad and cry, and who knows what the hell's going to happen with my big ogre self on this channel. So I let everybody see everything. But, the sky's the limit for Celsius. And at some point, we'll have to get into a discussion. I'll have you back on Because I have been looking into the DeFi space, and as I had told you before, I have a DeFi company that's interested in working with me, and I still haven't decided what direction I'm going to go, but I am learning more and more about that sector of cryptocurrency and its use case and how it's used or abused and so forth. And I think regardless of what happens, I definitely see a very bright future for Celsius. And yeah, man, we're closing in on an hour, 238 people live right now. Are there any final notes, anything else that you want to address before we sign off and I go eat something?
So let me say a few quick things. So DeFi, look, these are great companies. I don't want anyone to think that I'm against DeFi or anything like that. I think Maker adding USDC, which is basically adding centralization, putting one leg in the centralized world to stabilize their coin, is actually a very good thing. And that's what Celsius has been doing from day one, right? We have one leg in the centralized world, and then we support 13 different blockchains on the other side. So I think the model of being pure decentralized has proven that it cannot sustain itself. It had too many bugs, too many problems, too many hacks. And we need this model where you have one leg in centralization, one leg in decentralization, and then you act as a bridge for all the fiat money to come on into our community, you know? And I want, the call to action for your viewers, for the Celsians that are watching this as well, is the only people that are going to get us to new highs, that are going to get us to better place, are all the people who are watching this channel. It's not going to be the government. It's not going to be big corporate. It's not going to be institutions. We've waited for all these people to come and finish the race for us. It's not going to happen, right? So we need to find more people just like us and convince them. And some people, it's too much for them. I mean, at your event in Cincinnati, I said exactly the same thing, right? It's very hard to convince some people to buy Bitcoin, but it's not so hard to convince them to buy a stable coin that pays 6, 7, 8%. Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to do. We need to think about, what does this user need? Does he need income? He lost all of his income because the Fed lowered rates to 0, and now he's not making anything. He can't go into retirement. I have the perfect product for him. I know exactly how to get this person to see that he can actually get through retirement, right? And somebody younger who may be much more, be much more open to tokens or coins or anything else, you can take them straight into Ethereum or straight into Cardano or whatever you like, whatever they like. So what we haven't done well with the community is really create those really simple products with a simple user interface and bring hundreds of millions of people on board. Because we're all sitting on our money, on our coins, and hoping they're going to go to new highs. That's just not going to happen by itself. You have to work, just like I'm working 7 days a week, you know? So I think this is my call to action. You know, it's a call to action for everybody who's viewing us. You're at home, you're with family, you know, obviously health comes first, and worrying about your future and so on, but you got to also create your own future. You got to create your own economic opportunity. And if all of us got together and worked on it, we will get there. If we're all sitting and waiting for some guy to do it for us, it's not going to happen. Absolutely.
I concur, sir. And just to close this out for all of you guys out there, as I always say, crow your coins. This whole thing has not been paid for. Alex hasn't given me a dime. I had him on because I've always liked him. I appreciate what he's doing. I appreciate his message, and I value my relationship with him, to be quite frank with you. So Alex, you know, thanks for coming on and sharing your perspective. And look, man, I agree wholeheartedly. Everybody out there needs to, I always say, look, you don't sell at a loss, you average down. You know, and that's what keeps the wheels turning. And I know that it's difficult to say that right now as people are finding it really difficult. I mean, hell, you could probably trade Bitcoin for toilet paper, you know, as of right now. So, you know, it's difficult to say, go buy Bitcoin, go buy Celsius, go buy this, go buy that, when you can't even find toilet paper in your local grocery store. So it's it almost sounds funny, but, you know, this isn't going to last forever. And the message is clear, you know. We're going to move forward, and I think we're going to rise up. And I think once we really do start to rise up, I think it's going to be absolutely something we have not seen before. And I see a lot of these people talking about, oh, we might not reach new highs in 2020. I beg to differ. I think we're going to. And quite frankly, I think it's, I'm still one to believe in $11,000 to $14,000 Bitcoin by May. And we'll see if I'm wrong or not, but I've been saying this now for 6 months, and we've been hit with all kinds of craziness. But if we do in fact hit even 11 grand by May, to me, that will be that'll be that gauntlet being dropped, on everything that we know of right now. And so we'll just have to wait and see if we're at 2,000 or 20 by the end of the.
Look, I agree with you. I said it several times publicly that I think we will be at new highs by the end of the year. I just think it's going to happen later on. We did the two best things that happened was, one, we flushed through all of the speculators and the short sellers, and the second one is opening the halving, right? That is a huge event. It's not like a little event, right? Because basically half as many Bitcoins are going to be dumped on the market starting end of May. So anyway, you've been a great friend, and I appreciate you always saying it the way it is, no matter if it's good news or bad news, educating people, spending your time. Mm-hmm. And I think you're an asset to this community, and I applaud you for being the man, being true to yourself. One of the very few guys who have a backbone in this industry.
Well, I don't fear many people, but yeah, I appreciate you, man. For those of you guys that are out there, 237 of you watching live, it's 8 p.m. on Sunday evening, and Crow is Jesus. Well, house Staniloff, bless you, and good night. Crow your coins. I'll see you again soon.